All right, so let's get into some market news, also some indicators around the macro side of things. What could be driving the pressure on not only Bitcoin, but the rest of the crypto market? I think you guys will like this one. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Let's go into it. I do want to remind you guys, if you're not part of our Diamond Circle, get in. We have this great service called the CPI, which is our crypto power index. You can do a ton of things with it, mainly analyze sentiment around a variety of tokens that we track down. Of course, just jump over to our website. You can go right down there. It gives you a full rundown. If you want to join the Diamond Circle free, you can do that. Another thing that we have is our memberships. You can get into all three levels, whether it's the free, the power index, which gives you data on all these tokens, or the mastermind, where you get a chance to actually dive into a private member group with me, research, all that kind of stuff. Of course, just join in over there. Also, we have member deals over there. Check them out. These are all deals for you guys. 25% off on our current CPI, among many others. Get into TradingView over there. You can open a crypto IRA. Lots happening over there, so check it out. All right, let's go into a couple of pieces of news here. I want to start with this Bitcoin news right now. And price kind of shrugs off the PCE data. This is something that I think a lot of people have been a little bit surprised at, and that is where Bitcoin is currently and why it hasn't reacted to some of the good news that has been happening on Capitol Hill. If you think about the Ripple win, the good news on Capitol Hill, why have we not seen Bitcoin shred and go up to like 34,000, 36,000? That, I think, is a lot of questions that many people are asking. And you even consider this scenario right here. Price index now coming in below expectations. The expectation was 3.1, actual was 3. We're continuing to see a little bit of downtrend there. The likelihood of PCI inflation coming down next month could be real, and I think that's what the Fed is waiting for, to see if they get a double whammy. In other words, two different reports consecutively that show consistent downtrend in inflation. All of this is still, I think, in a very cautionary measure, because when you think about this right now, let's go back to the Ripple case. It still is a possibility it could get appealed. Likelihood very low, going to take years. Most likely there'll be legislation. And then if you look at what legislation is going through the House right now, it's only getting through the House preliminary committees. Granted, it's getting through and it's going to go to the floor, but they have not been voted on yet. And because of that, they may not get voted on and through the House. If they even make it through the House, then they have to clear the Senate. So the challenge, even though it's a good thing that all these things are happening, because these are steps forward in the crypto markets, blockchain industry as a whole, I think all of that is a benefit, but it is one of the things that I think is also kind of holding the market down. The other thing that is kind of mixed signals right now, and this is a thing I think a lot of people are asking. One side of analysts are telling us there's going to be a soft landing. The other side of analysts are telling us that we're still in for a recession. Here's Heather Long looking at the economic news right here. Q2 growth better than expected. PCI and PCE. Lowest in 2 years, big rise, 11% in consumer sentiment. That's probably the biggest one that was a surprise to me. Fed's no longer forecasting a recession. Not so worried about that. I'll show you something on that second. UPS strike averted. I thought that was a big deal. That would have been very detrimental to the U.S. economy. Stocks near all-time highs. Layoffs, jobless claims are low. Housing recession likely over, question mark there. And then consumption is still solid. That to me is still a concerning fact, because that, of course, plays into so much consumer credit as we go forward. The other thing that plays into this is still the ETF game. And the ETF is the one critical measure that I believe is the domino that drops, that makes the bull run happen no matter what. Whatever position we're in right now, or at that time, if an ETF gets approved, that will be the catalyst that moves forward. Here was Grayscale's CEO says, don't grant prejudicial first mover advantage for Bitcoin ETFs. Basically what's happening here, Grayscale did do a first mover, though it wasn't the exact model of ETF filings that the rest of these filings have done. But they were early, and they're in the middle of a lawsuit with the SEC to fight this out. But the likelihood of them getting preferential treatment is most likely not going to occur. I think they're just, they're kind of whining a little bit about this, but the point will be, I think it's BlackRock all the way in terms of an ETF approval. Now, could ARK play into this as well? Yes, it could. Timing-wise, we've talked about that in our ETF videos. Here is, of course, another tweet right here. It kind of breaks it down. James Seifert talking about this Bitcoin ETF saga isn't really about the law anymore. It's more about politics. And that, to me, is really where this all stands. This is talking about Gensler's future. It's talking about what's happening currently on Capitol Hill. And it's looking at the sentiment of not only the policymakers and lawmakers, but also a lot of the lobbying groups that are playing into this and that are going to start figuring out ways to utilize these bills. All this plays into, I think, a political landscape that could and will affect either an ETF approval or a denial. All that still yet to come. Peter Brandt was basically come on set and said, hey, Peter Brandt targets Gensler, says doubtful role in FTX. You think about some of the things that Gensler's been involved in, just to kind of show you. Gensler suffered losses due to bankruptcy of 3 commodity brokers while he was a CFTC chair, and Brandt accused Gensler of failing to protect himself. Let's get one thing clear. Gensler has a history of failed in protecting investors' approach. And remember, that's his whole shtick. Gensler goes out there, does all these social media videos, etc., saying he's protecting us, the average investor. This guy says, I made a loss when 3 commodity brokers, FCMs, went bankrupt due to fraudulent activities. Gensler was the chair of the CFTC at the time, government agency tasked with protecting clients against commodity brokerage firms. And then Gensler also played a dubious role in the failure of FTX. Obviously, we know all of those things that have come out in the open about Gensler's activities in his meetings with SBF fraud. So there is, of course, that side of things. And does this all play out into a potential of even more pressure on these commissioners at the SEC to maybe make amends and get something passed? BlackRock seems to be in the right position at the right time. It still is yet to be determined whether that's going to be the case. Sam Bankman, going back to Sam Bankman, here was coming in from Watcher Guru, donated $93 million in stolen customer funds to U.S. politicians. So think about this, because this is the exact situation that's happening. We just put out a bunch of videos this week on the stablecoin bill, the FIT bills, all of those basically digital asset bills that are trying to make their way through the House. This is very interesting because a lot of these congressmen, lawmakers, senators, etc., have taken money from some of the worst people in crypto. And that is interesting because I think we're going to be playing out a very good next step of them trying to make amends and get the right kind of laws through, and also the right kind of support from the correct lobbyist coming through, because that's pretty much it. Just to remind everybody that the Fed saying that we might be in a soft landing, just so we're aware of this. This goes back all the way to January 17, 2008. That was our last real recession. Ben Bernanke, was the Fed chair, Gensler's position at that time. Fed is not forecasting a recession. We had one of the worst recessions in the history of business. Now we hear on July 26, and Powell says Fed staff is no longer forecasting a recession. Either history is going to repeat itself, or this particular chair is a complete phenomenon in terms of predicting the future. And I still believe we are in for a light recession based on the macro pressures that we're seeing. The fact that we are not seeing markets moving in liquidity into these risk assets, I believe still pushes us there, which means that we have some potential for some downside in the traditional markets. Here's macro Alf. We probably should get Alf back on the show. Monetary policy time lags are long and variable, but the next 9 to 12 months historically represent periods when the odds of an actual recession should be higher. This is the period in which a potential recession could happen, and there's some breakdowns there showing the 3-month and the 10-year curve. And I think when you look at one of the things that plays out into this, at least in my opinion, is still the Russia-Ukraine war. We also have other influences coming in, and I think the United States is actually economically in a pretty good position right now, understanding that there's been so much liquidity that poured into the markets, obviously because of we know why, but how that plays out into the long-term effect. And also timing here is going to be critical again because we have an election year coming up. So no elected official wants to be in a year where we are seeing massive recession hits. So I feel like this is going to be a short, lighter recession, possibly could last as many, well, maybe as short as 8 months, which is what one of the shortest ones that has happened in the past. Now, what and who are preparing for a recession? Because remember, when you make your most wealth is when everybody else is selling and no one is buying, because that's when markets are depressed. It's also when you are in a position to move in. It's a very hard thing to do, and it's a very difficult thing to do as an investor, but it's also hard to do as a business owner and as, hiring people. A lot of businesses will go in and they'll hire people when markets are absolutely in just destruction mode. And the reason is because they realize the opportunities that represent it. So here's Sequoia slashing its crypto fund 66% after the industry collapsed. And if you think about this, this could be a good sign. And let me kind of explain that. So Sequoia Capital curbed crypto investments by 65%, opting for a nurturing stance on startups, not a volatile market apathy, but strategic cognition. This means, I believe, that they are getting rid of the stuff that doesn't matter and starting to prep for what will matter. And this is kind of like when you look at taking your, tax loss harvesting, things of that nature you do at certain times of the year, and looking at some of the investments that you are also in and maybe saying, hey, maybe I need to rebalance my portfolio. I've done that many times. And it pays off, because if you rebalance it at the right time, the key here is you end up in an asset, whether it's depressed, like maybe Ethereum or even Bitcoin to a certain extent, and you're doing it at a time, even though we may see further down trends, the likelihood of seeing massive corrections in those two tokens is probably going to be fairly limited. So I think it's a good strategy going forward. Here's a crypto strategist. Basically, Michael Van de Poppe says one catalyst could trigger a continuation of the Bitcoin bull run, Bitcoin bull cycle. I believe that to be the ETF. If we do get an approval on the ETF, I think that's going to help. If we get a denial, that will also affect the market. But the thing that will come in behind that is any kind of good sign in the crypto regulation as we go forward in terms of positive potential movement forward. Now, let me play out a couple of scenarios for you. Let's just assume that we continue to see a little bit more market pressure from the macro side. And let's assume that we do not get an ETF. What would the markets do? Worst case scenario, maybe you see a 15% correction on Bitcoin. And we get the worst news, which would be no moving forward on any of the bills. That would be the kind of cycle that would be all things bad, and the situation would continue to go through a cycle of how Bitcoin and other markets have responded in the past. Meaning, when markets do come back, another round of ETF filings will come and another round of lawmaking will come. That's the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is either one of those things proves out to be a good thing, meaning we get an ETF or we get a bill passed. Either one of those things puts us in the next level of how crypto investing and blockchain technology will advance forward. That, along with timing with new elections and also the happening, that is a very bullish indicator. So that's what you're watching for, and also trying to play on both sides of your strategy. So it is one thing that we're going to continue to keep a big eye on this. Now, when you think about strategy, you have to look at how the big guys are playing this. And here's Wisdom Tree basically saying, hey, we're going to leave no stone unturned. This is a new blockchain native app. This is the CEO talking about this. This is a fund group with 97 billion in assets. Says they have an ambitious product roadmap. This is for their Prime app. As a tokenization gains steam. And a lot of people have been talking about this. A couple of things here I wanted to highlight down here in the article. This is not only a validation of our tokenized strategy, but also underscores the strong position that Wisdom Tree is in, being an early mover and the first with any sort of robust product set. So this again shows some of the early adopters that understand that there's going to be a cycle of new products, services, all that kind of coming into the tokenized market of securities and many other areas of business. So the fact that Wisdom Tree moving into this is a good sign. All good signs. Right now, this was a good week, I think, for crypto in general. Here was a tweet, nice right here from Mike Novogratz, Joe Consorti. U.S. is now paying $970 billion in interest payments, $41 billion in Q2. At this rate, it will hit $1 trillion soon. Tax receipts continue to lag sovereign debt growth. interest payments will increasingly be funded with revenue from more debt issuance. This is a problem, people, and it's one of the reasons that we believe that the only way to protect yourself against this kind of deflation and this kind of devaluation of the American US dollar is through digital assets. And I think this is the shift that we're going to live through. You're going to get a chance to live through this in your lifetime, and it's going to be a big one for sure. Here, of course, is Cathie Wood, one of the biggest Bitcoin bulls out there. Bitcoin is set to accelerate as a store of value. In wake of bank collapses, obviously, Cathie has been very bullish on this. Just to remind everybody, we see 3 revolutions taking place because of crypto. Bitcoin will dominate the first one, money revolution. That was, in the banks, of course, situation was a flight to safety. That's everybody going into money markets, everybody going into digital assets. That will still continue. Second revolution is in financial services. This, to me, is going to be huge for Ethereum. And this is going to be in all sorts of financial services. So again, those 2 major asset classes, Bitcoin, Ethereum, very, very positive. Last but not least, according to Wood, is digital property rights. And this is going to be NFTs, Web3, metaverses, all that. You are in the next 3 advancements of innovation right now. If you're watching our channel, those are the 3 things we cover the most. Innovation, what's happening in the crypto digital markets, what's happening in digital assets, and where is the future of technology moving. All of what Cathie just mentioned right there in those 3 innovations, you've landed on the right channel. So make sure and subscribe right now. Hit the like button if you like these kind of videos where we break this stuff down. I am going to give you some sentiment analysis. We'll take a look at some charts and then also give you kind of a heads up of where some of our tokens are going. Here's another tweet right here. Meta shares surged, obviously, after a very rosy revenue forecast, showed that the AI side of things was helping their social media plan. Let me zoom up on that so you guys can read that tweet. Giant boost engagement. Ad sales, even in an uncertain economy, also up. So that's a good sign for Meta. If you purchased Meta back when we were buying it, then you're in good position. Question is, are you going to keep it? What is your position on that as they continue to roll out? Remember, the MetaQuest 3 coming out later this fall, most likely going to cause more anticipation around that. Here is updates on ETH Toronto coming up, and also ETH Munich. Let me know if you guys are going to any of these. I may actually go to the ETH Toronto event. I've been invited, so I may take a trip up to Canada and see some of you guys up there. Just a heads up on Helium Mobile. You guys know that we do like Helium in general. It's in the CPI. We track it often. I'm very intrigued just because of its relationship with Solana right now, and also with just the Helium Mobile token. If you look over here on CoinMarketCap, right here, you can kind of see this massive move. This is the all-time right here. So it has seen some pretty significant lift here. And I do believe that we're going to see Helium Mobile in a very unique proposition as we start to see more and more blockchain integrations into mobile technology. Obviously, Solana will be a big part of that. So it's part of that Solana ecosystem. So I'm a big fan of where that's going. Another move right here, everybody's been asking us about Polygon. Is Polygon now the time, I should say, to go back into Polygon? We'll take a look at Polygon in a minute, but right here is Palm Network's transition into a Polygon SuperNet. It's a big deal. A couple of highlights here. I just want to highlight a few things. Network boasts licensed collectibles from big brands like NASCAR, Netflix, Major League Baseball, Warner Brothers, which will now be bringing all of that to the Polygon ecosystem. That's good news for Polygon. It's also one of the things that we talk about often with Polygon is once that they get into more and more adoption, more and more news, engine aspects and releases of PR, etc. This is early stages. This could also be the first of many as we start to see these subnet and supernets start to kind of compete. If you think about what's happening over on Avalanche. So if you want to hedge, play both sides. Look at what Polygon is doing. Look at what Avalanche is doing. And it's going to be interesting. This is the 4th ZK EVM SuperNet that got announced just in the last 2 weeks. So that's a pretty big deal. So would you go back into Polygon? We're actually going to do that. So I'm giving you an early heads up. We are looking at moving back into Polygon. Let me go over to the charts real quick. I did not have my chart up, so I'm going to bring it up real quick. And I think we're on let me go to the 4 hour because that's the one I like. Even though the Crypto Pit does not like this chart, I like it. And I'm going to go over and take a look at Matic right now. All right, so you can kind of see this downtrend that we've been seeing on Matic. And as you know, with sentiment, if you're in our CPI, then you've been watching a little bit of movement on Matic. Now, the key here is Matic has had still continuous downtrend on overall sentiment after this pump right here that we saw. And remember, this pump right here was significant. Let's just go from let's squeeze this down a little bit and show you guys the move that Matic had all the way back here from mid-July. We'll go right here to, actually we'll go to June, and we'll go to this high right here, which was right there on the 14th of July. That was a 36% move. So that, if you took a little profits, great. If you did not, then maybe you're going to be getting in on this opportunity right here, because this right here was about a 17% downtrend. So the question is Matic going to hold this, or will we see possibly getting back into the 60, maybe high 50s in terms of potential entry point? Our position right now is Matic is going to be another buy. We are going to go back into this token, do some investing. So we're actually going to do a buy on Matic. Most likely I'll buy some today. Others that I want to take a look at, Solana, of course, had this nice little move right here. Not too bad, really, from the last 10 days or so. Let's see what that move has been right there. And we'll take a look at the sentiment on Solana as well. All right, so right around 8%, not huge there. If you jump over to our CPI, let me log in there, and we'll go to our, if you guys have never used it, this is how it works. You go right into the CPI, get view to content, then it's going to go over to your dashboard. You jump into the dashboard, and this is where you can get to either top crypto or metaverse tokens. I'll take a look at top crypto, and I want to take a look at the Solana chart real quick. And I'll jump back and forth here. Solana has been the one that's been a little bit erratic. Let's let it paint there. There we go. All right, so a little bit erratic, but you'll notice this little jump right here. It had amplification actually over-indexed, and a lot of that happened when Solana was back on this move right here. This is what we're talking about, over-indexing. That's when you see these crazy growth periods. This is just from early July to right there. That was 56%. It kind of held that zone for a little bit. Then let's jump out of that zone and go to where we are right now, down about 9%. So if you look back here at the sentiment chart, this is kind of this downward trend that we're starting to watch. Now, the thing that I want to zoom in on here is very interesting. With Solana, amplification and general sentiment are actually pairing up interestingly close. And as I always say, if you get a flip, in other words, amplification meaning, hey, I'm going to go buy Solana. That's what people are talking about. Then that's always positive for a token. If it starts to separate where amplification and top line sentiment start to deviate, that's usually a bad sign. And those are the things we're watching for all the time over on our sentiment charts. Let's go back over here to the charts real quick. Take a look at Avalanche, which is up slightly on the day right now, just slightly on this candle. But this, again, might be another opportunity here for a buy-in at around 13, even though remember, this thing hit almost $16. It actually wicked up to $15.98 right there on July 14th. So another token we're in. We do like that one. I showed a token. If you guys didn't catch our video yesterday, we had a whole list of tokens. It's not our true degen list, but it was our Coinbase tokens that we were representing or kind of talking about what our strategy is and how we're going. Again, not financial advice. I'm sharing what we do, what I do. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But for the most part, the key that I feel like you will always win with, the problem is are you willing to put in the work, is do the research. Really do the research, and do not go with one source, not just us, many others. There's a lot of great channels out there. There's a lot of great websites and research. Hopefully we just set you on the right direction. And that's the main thing. But these are the areas we play in, and I feel like we're pretty conservative. So that is one of the things that, of course, I think flows into the future here for sure. All right, so listen, guys, if you're not part of the Diamond Circle, make sure and get in. It's easy and it's free. All you have to do is click the link down below. If you want to catch me out there on Twitter, X, whatever it might be, it's @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechBath.